In this video, I'm going to talk to you about two individual HiFi products that are essentially from the same manufacturer, and they are very interlinked but totally different and independent products, and they're both high-end, and one of them really is expensive and the other one really isn't expensive. So maybe both will be of interest to you, but if not, maybe one or the other. And product one is the JCAT XACT S1 music server that you can see there on the rack there behind me. And it's the world's first fully linear computer-based music server. So this is really a big technology development or advancement. And the second product to review is JPLAY, which is a music library control application or app. And it's definitely my favorite app of its kind. So we have a huge amount to cover here, and I hope you enjoy the video. And I'm going to start with the JCAT XACT S1 music server because it really is a cool product with, very interesting technology developments going on there. And it ticks nearly every box for me personally, but it's definitely a product that's not designed for every audiophile. It's designed for specific audiophiles who really value specific things. But I think if you value the same specific things that this is intended to be designed for, well, then this is likely to be one of the best products available for you right now. But I think to get to that point, we need to look at a little bit of history, because I think the history will make you understand or maybe value this or understand the value of this maybe a little bit more. I have been a computer audiophile enthusiast for well over a decade, and I was actually a computer audio enthusiast before I even realized I was, because the first time I held an iPad in my hand and could control a music library from an iPad really was a revelationary moment for me. And that was probably about 10 years ago now. And we take it for granted these days, don't we? You can just pull out our phone and go on, any streaming service and get access to all this music. But 10 years ago, that wasn't the case at all. And my first exposure to this was using a Meridian Sulus system. And there's a video in the channel of my old Meridian system. It was actually, before I made this a HiFi YouTube channel, it was just, a personal video. So you can see the system that I was using there, and it was pretty good. But I soon realized that the Meridian Sulus system was really just a computer in a box, in a fancy Meridian box. And that got me really interested in building my own. And the reason I was motivated to build my own is because then I could make it exactly what I wanted it to be, parts and hardware. But really it's because of the software. I wanted to use Dirac Live on it. So I could use Dirac Live room correction for a HiFi system, because back, 7-8 years ago, there was no access. You couldn't get Dirac Live for HiFi, and you could barely get Dirac Live for anything, but you could run it as software. So I built a computer for a music source, ran Dirac Live on it, and it was great. But I soon realized that the sound quality wasn't that wonderful. So over the next 7 or 8 years, I explored, tested and tried lots of different things to get better sound quality from a computer. And I've made loads of videos about this, and I've tested and tried all number of different things. And I learned very quickly that there's different ways to get better sound from a computer. Some of it's from hardware, some of it's from power, and some of it's actually from software, believe it or not. So I was a computer audio enthusiast up until very recently, and if you followed the channel for a while, you'll remember I used to have giant boxes over here on the racks where I had a computer music server and a big power supply, and in that music server, which my last build I think was back in 2019, that continually got developed with component after component, power supply bits and pieces. So that was fantastic and great. And I actually think when I built my last build, and even up until recently, it was quite ahead of its time. But I also know the whole hi-fi market has very much developed now in terms of music servers, and I think the whole hi-fi market is very much caught up. And some of what manufacturers are doing these days has definitely exceeded what I was doing in my last build and in my last music server. But interestingly, When I think of the very best of the best computer-based music servers that are available today from lots of very well-known brands, a lot of them have one major thing in common with my build, and that is that they're all using what I'm going to call like a generic computer motherboard in them. Like there's a computer in there and there's other bits and pieces that make those products what they are, but essentially there's a computer motherboard in there. And computer motherboards are probably one of the most flexible, devices on the market. They can do any number of different things. I was using an Asus server motherboard in my last build and an Intel CPU, right? So these are like generic computer parts, but none of those parts are really designed for high-end audio, are they? And yet, the computer is what allows all the other, features and function and flexibility to happen within that music server. So the JCAT XACT S1 to be the world's first computer-based music server to do away with that generic computer motherboard and have its own custom-built, fully linear motherboard really is a big technology deal. And from the front and from the sides and the rear, the XACT S1 is very understated, and while it feels well built, it's not built like a tank or doesn't exude a hugely luxurious feeling about it for its high price tag. But I do really like the rounded edges and the colour contrast, and for some reason I really like that orange colour for the main and only button, which is the power button really, and it's different but I think it looks pretty cool. And I think when you look at it compared to my old case, which was also from JCAT, you can clearly see there's been a big step forward here in the aesthetics, from really a computer case to something that's much better and nicer. On the rear, there is not much to see either. There are two USB outputs for connecting to a DAC, one with and one without 5 volts, and some DAC owners will be thrilled by this option and you know who you are. There is a third USB for connecting a hard drive or to upload music to the internal 4TB SSD storage, but you can also send music to it via your network. Stranger to many will be the 5 LAN and the single WAN port on a music server. That really is strange, but it's because you can use the XACT S1 as a dedicated network switch for real extreme audio files and systems, but I didn't test that. Also strange to some will be the SD card that has the custom, very optimized Linux-based operating system that's fully made by JCAT in-house, and it's software that put JCAT or JPLAY really on the map many years ago. So this is a huge part of the product's appeal and performance, but it obviously doesn't look like anything special. But I know all too well that little SD card is loaded with years of expertise and experience to make the software side of this S1 server be very optimized. Anyone who's done any DIY building will realize how difficult that is, how time consuming that is. So that's like a massive appeal part of this product to me personally. I think it will be to other DIYers who've gone deep down the rabbit hole with this type of thing as well. However, I think to fully appreciate the S1, you need to remove the lid to look inside, and there are some things that really grab your eye. The power supply is a big deal here. It's custom made for the S1 by JCAT. It's using a very high quality and large transformer with Nichicon and Nichicon Fine Gold capacitors, and a lot of them, as much capacitance as some power amplifiers. And there are a number of specific details that DIYers like me love about this, such as the quality of all of the cabling, the choice of the SSD that's used for the storage, and the really high quality OCXO clock, and more. But most exciting here, of course, is the motherboard, because it's the world's first fully linear, custom-made motherboard for a music server of this type. So even though other high-end music server manufacturers are using linear power supplies, and some of them are using a lot of them, they're still feeding like a generic computer motherboard which has switching components on it as well. So feeding a computer motherboard linear power supplies is better. It makes the situation infinitely better. It makes the sound quality infinitely better, but it's not perfect because the motherboard itself is still a limiting factor. And what's really interesting is when you get into the DIY side of things, and also how a lot of the high-end computer music servers are built, a lot of what you put in there power wise and signal wise and components wise is to try and bypass that computer motherboard as much as possible, because it's always the bottleneck of the system, again, because it's not purely designed for audio. So taking that computer motherboard out, using the one that is custom, purposely designed for audio, like I keep saying, it is a big deal. And JCAT are calling it Xena, which is a zero noise architecture design. Very cool. I like the name for that. So I don't want to underplay or overplay, I suppose, the value of this, but this is a big technology development. JCAT are the first to do it, but I do think we'll probably or likely see other manufacturers of high-end servers start to do it as well. So you're likely to see more of this, I think, in the future, but just remember that you saw it here first. Assessing the sound quality of a digital music source has got to be one of the hardest things you can do as a reviewer, because of course its sound is massively dictated by what DAC you connect to it. I mean, what DAC do you choose? Do you choose FPGA, R2R, or something different? So I have tried to listen to the S1 over a period of months using lots of different DACs and lots of different hi-fi components and systems to a very high level, because I've been looking for its limit. At what point does it introduce its own sound onto the hi-fi system components here? That was my goal. And for the 4 or 5 different DAC solutions that I've used, some have used 5 volts, some have used no 5 volts. Everything just worked perfectly, literally plug and play, nice and simple. And that's something, again, a lot of audiophiles take for granted. But when you're building your own music server, it's based on Windows, you have to install drivers. It becomes a real pain. So not having any of that hassle has been fantastic for me. And I have had some really very high-end gear here recently to around, I think, about £100,000. That's a lot of money for a hi-fi system. And the S1 has easily been good enough for a source for a system at that level, easily. I've just had here the epically good German Physics Borderland Mark IV speakers, which cost about £30,000. I have here behind me now the Griffin Diablo 333 integrated amplifier of £25,000 and a £17,000 Ideon Audio DAC. And with this setup, I was starting to hear just how good the S1 can be. And that is because the S1 sounds clean. I mean, really clean. Like the cleanest digital source I've ever had in here before, which I'll explain shortly. But beyond that, everything just sounds correct. So we get a good amount, the right amount, a substantial amount of bass. And not lean like some digital sources can sound. They just seem to rob music of that fullness and that dynamics, and that's not the case here. We get fantastic timing, tone, and timbre. We get excellent small details, but also kind of the big details, like micro, macro details and dynamics. We get fantastically clear vocals that have great character. There's brilliant treble detail. There's none of that digital glariness that you can sometimes get. So every single point of sound quality that I've been able to hear through the systems I've had here, I'd say the S1 delivers on all of them. And interestingly, I have not found its limit, or I have not found where I think it's introducing its own sound onto the music. I feel like the limits of the sound I've been hearing have probably been this room and the size of this room, but also I can hear characters of the speakers or character of the amplifier and so on, more so than the source. And you might think, well, it's a digital source, they all do that. No, they really don't, because I think when you're listening to digital, especially streamed digital, maybe really high-end, CD players and transports are a little bit different, but when you're streaming music from the cloud, I think you can always just tell that it's digital. You can just tell you're listening to digital music, which means the source, I believe, is adding some character to the music. Even if it's only a small amount, you can just tell that it's digital, right? And let's be honest, that's 99.9% the case, I think, most of the time. Whereas with the S1, that's not the case really. You don't get that same feeling of the music like that. You do obviously a tiny bit, but nowhere near as much. So that's been the really interesting one for me. And I have been Well, I could say that as a source, maybe it sounds more analog-like than other digital sources. And I would actually say, this is going to seem really weird, maybe it sounds more analog than an analog source. Right, let me explain that, because recently I've got into vinyl and I've been trying to get vinyl sound quality up to match the level of the digital setups that I have in here, which are very, very expensive, crazy high level recently they have been. And I've got to be honest, at the moment I can't get vinyl to sound anything like as good as the digital gear. It's nowhere near as expensive and I'm still very new to it, but the delta difference is still really big. But beyond that, of course, because I'm listening to vinyl and I'm listening to really good digital on the same hi-fi system, same speakers, same room, even though I'm not directly comparing them because it doesn't make sense to, I'm always comparing them. And if we was to say, what does analog sound like? What am I looking for when I'm listening to analog? What am I looking for when I'm listening to vinyl? I'd say it's like you're looking to remove that digital edge or that digital sound that comes along with that. Like I mentioned before, we're looking for music that's maybe a little bit smoother, a little bit more, free or easygoing, or maybe a bit more relaxed. Some people would say it's kind of like a more musical sound. So if I say to you that the S1 music server with the really good DACs I've had in here just recently, if that sounds smoother, warmer, more edge-free, more easygoing, more musical than vinyl, good vinyl with a good turntable and a good cartridge, if digital sounds more like that, then I think you could say that digital in this setup, in this instance, sounds more analog than analog. So while it sounds like a madman crazy thing to say, that's been my experience when I've been listening between the two. So that's very, very high praise for a computer music server or a music server that's streaming music from the cloud. It's very high praise. And I actually can't find any sonic fault at the moment with the XACT X1 from JCAT. Now, I don't have its main big rival competitors here from the other big brands. So maybe in like a side-by-side comparison between those, you would hear things and you go, yeah, I can hear maybe that's where its shortcomings are. But without doing that side-by-side comparison, I can't find the fault in this source. And this is the only time I could probably say that. So what is the catch here and what are the negatives of the XACT S1? Well, there are two main ones for me. The first one is going to be the price, because it's 12,000 euros. So it's a hell of a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money for a digital source, a digital music server, of course. But if I step back a minute and I look at the competition or products from the likes of, Inuos, Antipodes and Tyco, they're best of the best types of music servers. I think they all cost more than that, quite a bit more in the case of the Tyco. And to the best of my understanding, none of those have like a fully linear design on their motherboards and stuff. So yes, the JCAT is expensive, but from a technology point of view, obviously it's pushing the boundaries a little bit more than some of the other main competition. So we have to factor that in. But I think the real bigger shortcoming for some audiophiles will be the very stripped down nature of what this product is, because it doesn't really have the bells and whistles of a lot of even very affordable music servers these days. So there's no Wi-Fi for starters. That's by design. There's no fancy DSP or EQ or any of those extra fancy bells and whistles, like fancy screen like you see on the Ever Solos, right, for a lot less money. There's none of that here. It's like a very stripped down, quite bare bones, focused purely on performance type of product. So that, like I said, it's not going to be for everybody. It's going to be, for the specific audiophiles who really value those specific things. But like I said at the start, if that's you and you value those things, this might well be the best product you can buy right now of this type. The second product I am reviewing in this video is much more affordable. It costs £43.99 a year, I think, or $49.99 a year. So that's less than £4 or dollars a month. So, very affordable by comparison. And when you judge value, value is not what something costs, it's how much you use it. And I use this product for hours and hours every single week. And the product I'm talking about is, of course, the JPLAY music music library control app, and I've actually been using it for well over a year now, I think, because I was involved in the beta testing of it. So I've been using it for a really long time, and of course I get to use lots of other apps from lots of other manufacturers when products come in, and the JPLAY app is by far my favorite app for some specific key reasons. And the first reason is simple. It combines my Tidal music library and my own CD-ripped music library into one. And I can navigate it all together, or I can navigate them separately if I want to. And it's always lightning fast, especially considering it's using UPnP for control. And that means you can use the JPLAY app with nearly every music server available. And I compare it all of the time, and I always end up going back to JPLAY because it's just so nice to use. It's slick. It's easy to build a playlist that stays in the app forever, so I can keep going back to it and listening to the same bigger selection of music, which is really useful for me in my job when I'm assessing the sound of gear. Another thing I love about the JPLAY app is the visual aspect of it. The album art size and the navigation of everything I think is almost perfect. Also almost perfect, I think, is the Tidal integration in terms of searching. You can quickly search all your music or just Tidal to find specific albums, songs and artists without needing to change the page. So this makes searching quick, easy and a pleasure and not a chore. The Tidal integration is so well done that you can get to it from the homepage, or you can go much deeper into Tidal like you would on a dedicated app. And it's all seamless and quick, and the integration is fantastic because it doesn't feel like you're using a different system like it does within a lot of other music control apps. The layout and navigation of the app is almost perfect too. Maybe that's just because I've got very familiar with it, but I find in the main it's less cumbersome to use than others. So I can get to the music I want to listen to really easy and really fast, but the experience of getting there is still nice. And this is aided by just how fast the app is. It's so fast, everything is almost instant. You never hardly see any buffering of album art, which does drive me mad about any app in 2024. The main menu system can be a little confusing at first, but you do get used to it. There is also not many options to choose from, so it's nice and simple to set up and customize. But the important options are there, such as selecting gapless playback or selecting how you want your clicks to add music to your play queue. And then lastly, what I really like is how the app experience is equally good on my phone as it is my big iPad Pro, because of course a bigger screen gives us a better experience. But most of the time I just use my phone because I always have it on me and I can still enjoy the same great experience. And also I can have a different play queue that's on my phone that's always there all of the time. So that just helps me in this job because I can go and listen to the same music all of the time to compare and assess gear. Now, there are some, what I'm going to call quite big shortcomings or negatives with the JPLAY app, maybe only compared to something like Roon. If you're a Roon power user and you like using its equalization and DSP and all its more fancy functions, the JPLAY app doesn't really offer you that. It's more of a, point and click, get music playing, go deep, go searching for music type of app. It's not really there for EQ or any kind of fancy bells and whistles. So that is different to Roon, but you don't need a dedicated computer just to run it. It just runs as software or as an app on your phone or on your tablet. So that is a huge advantage for cost and other things. One other negative would be that it's only on iOS, so only for Apple devices. So that means it's not going to be for everybody. And another big shortcoming will be the streaming service integration is only for Tidal and Cobra. So that's not going to, appeal or appease everybody, maybe if you use different services. So to conclude this very long review, obviously, of the two different products, just quickly on a situation, if you was to purchase JCAT XACT S1 music server, then you get a lifetime's free access to the JPLAY app included in the price, which, I think's right given the price of the product, but really the two are designed to go together, but they're just not designed exclusively to go together. But as a pairing, coming from a DIY builder enthusiast background, this is the best solution I've had in here. It's a much better solution than I was I built myself several years ago, and it's a better solution than I could build myself today, because I would still need to use a generic computer motherboard, because that's all you can buy generally, and I would have to build around it. Whereas with the XACT S1, it's taking care of all of that for you. It's like taking that whole extreme music server concept to like the nth degree. So that's really exciting. I think it's really cool, and I think as a product, it's not going to appeal to everybody, but you'll know who you are if this type of product. We're all about performance, trying to get the best sound quality possible from a big music library these days, stored and streamed. Well, then this will appeal to you. If you're just, if this is too expensive, right, and it's a lot of money, if you're just interested in like the app side of things, well, then that's a different thing altogether. It's like, give it a try, get a 2-week trial. It's a really great app to use, and yeah, I kind of can't recommend both of these products enough in their own individual rights. And I think I have to applaud JCAT, because it's not a Macintosh, it's not a Bowers & Wilkins, it's not a huge company, JPLAY, JCAT, it's all run by the one guy, Marcin Ostapowicz. To be able to continually, and it's been like 10 years really of continual development, cutting edge products, hardware and software, to continually be able to do that is no mean feat. Like being at the cutting edge of something is no mean feat, and I think I appreciate it more because I've been along for the whole ride. I can see the developments of these things, so it's amazing to sit here today in 2024 and have products like this available. Yes, it's expensive, but like we all know that products start expensive, and then that the technology gets trickled down over time. So like, this is a step forward, a definite step forward in the right direction for all of us audiophiles. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful. If you've enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up. And if you appreciate my take on hi-fi reviewing, please subscribe to the channel.